different construct. Thank you, Muhammad.
Okay, so a couple of ground rules is that we're going to ask that people who are not part of the local area to have priority to asking questions. And so please, as you ask before you ask your question, please state your name and what country you're from. Okay? And I think we have a brother over here that, actually, yeah, first down here.
はい、日本から来ました澤田と申します。よろしくお願いいたします。先週の水曜日に韓国礼拝が終わりまして、その後にヒョンジン王様に質問しました。
Last Wednesday, after the Korean service, I asked
どういう質問かと言いますと、ハン氏主にのですね、が肉的に堕落したという噂を私は聞きました。なぜそういう噂があるのかということをですね、聞いたところ、そしたらですね、ヒョンジン様は何のためらいもなくそれは事実だとおっしゃいました。
And he answered without hesitation that that is fact.
それはお父様がすでに語ってらっしゃるんだということで、
And he said that Father has already spoken this.
御言葉のですね、先週に書いてあるということでした。
And he said that this is recorded in Father's words.
それは非常に驚きなんですけれども、続けてヒョンジン様はそれは別に驚くことではないと。
I was surprised, shocked by this, but the king said that this is nothing to be surprised about.
ということで、そのことについてですね、私はお伺いしたいということでございます。
So today I'd like to ask a follow-up question on that.
ここにですね、
Well, I said it's possible given what Father said in 2009. I didn't say it's absolutely fact. That's incorrect.
それが絶対的な事実だとは申し上げませんでした。お父様が言われた内容を見ると、それは可能性があるというふうに申し上げたと記憶しています。
Because in 2009, now we have the text, and Mr. Lee has it, Reverend Lee has it. But the text shows that in True Father's Maisam Sanjib, is it translated? 614, that page 141, that Father says the mother has fallen. Yeah, right here. And then what Kajang Yanab did is after they saw this, mother and who was it, Peter Kim, went to the Yoksap Hyuncheonhae, which is the historical records keeping area, and then told them to delete it. So they printed another book which doesn't have that, so that we have both copies.
I mean, when you look at the text here, it's quite clear what it says. 어머니 타락했으니
복귀하는 것은
한 것은
어머니가
해야 돼요. So that's
어머니가 타락했으니.
That's pretty black and white. There's really not many ways to interpret that. And then given that the heretic church went back and changed it
Changed it, yeah.
after Father ascended shows that they have motive to change it. So their actions would indicate that what Father said is prima facie is what it says. So I think when you look at the evidence and you look at, the understanding of principle, what's been happening to this time, you can come to a natural conclusion that yes, she did fall.
Oh, I see. They changed it. So they changed it.
Yeah, I mean, that's conclusive evidence of, if you don't believe Father as a witness, then you don't believe Father as the Lord of Second Advent. So you have to accept Father's words as they are. And so Father has spoken that Mother has fallen.
Okay, we have a question down over there. Hold on, just 1 minute.
Okay, sorry. My name is Ryuta Izumi. Originally from Japan, but now mission country is Poland. Sorry, I speak just only Japanese English. Sorry. My question is about marine industry for the future, because true father likes fishing, and I think he promotes marine industry. But I think nowadays this marine industry looks like far from church activity. For example, in Japan, Mr. Sato established some kind of company, and he said based on True Father's idea, but Family Federation doesn't like it, and looks like their activity is far from church activity. But what is your opinion about this marine industry? What is the opinion of Sanctuary Church about this? I want to.
Sanctuary Church's position is very clear. Father is the returning Lord. He is the Lord of the Second Advent. So he's the Messiah. That means that everything Father does is not as a human would do it, because he's basically the living body of God on earth. And so you have to, that's the main point you have to accept when you accept Sanctuary's teaching, is that Father is the Messiah. So whenever Father does an activity, it's not a human activity. He doesn't do fishing because he likes it. He does fishing because it's a part of God's providence on this earth. And so our position is that the reason why Father did fishing and trying to develop the fishing industry is that is part of God's providence or God's will and the expression of God's will on earth. And so that is a providential industry. The fishing and outdoor sports industry is what Father designated as a type of work which will bring you closer in relationship to understanding the principle and God's will on earth.
My name is Johann Hobel. I'm from Austria. I have two short questions. First one is, what about the blessings Mother did the last years and maybe next years? What about these blessings?
The Sanctuary position is very clear on the blessings which Mother has conducted alone. She is conducting those blessings as a fallen woman, and therefore those blessings are uniting the people who are receiving Mother's blessing, not with God, but with Satan. So she's taking, everybody who receives Mother's blessing is actually being grafted into satanic lineage and will be taken to hell with her.
They have to, for them, it's only the way to
Once
get the blessing again.
once you receive Mother's blessing, it's the same as falling.
Mhm.
So you would have to return back to Father's lineage.
Father's blessing.
Yes, as a first generation. If you're a second generation, it fell.
Self also. Thank you. Another question is, we saw on the table 11 candles. What is the meaning of 11 candles?
Father says that towards the end of his life, basically, in order to enter God's kingdom, you have to transcend the number of perfection, which is, of course, the number of perfection is 10. So you have to go one beyond it, and that's 11.
Thank you. Thank you.
In the Kook Constitution, there is a. My name is Tadashi Igarashi from Las Vegas, and in the Kook Constitution, there is a regulation about controlled substance to be regulated by the state. And since I came from Las Vegas, how about gambling? Is there any regulations?
We do not regulate gambling in the Constitution because the kingdom of heaven is a world of freedom and responsibility, where individuals who are kings and sovereigns in God's kingdom have freedom and responsibility to determine what God wants them to do and what God desires them to do in their lives. So, as the government of Kook, we will not force people to do good because God gave us an all of choice to do good or evil. But it is in our desire to become close in relationship to God that we choose to do good. And because we choose to do good, then we can love God and have that give and take relationship with him. So the Kook Constitution will not take away people's freedoms to decide to love God. But if you're going to let people decide to love God, then you have to give them the freedom to hate God. And so if you take away that freedom, then you cannot honestly love God. And therefore, in Kook, if you choose to do evil and to hate God, you can do that. But in a society where people are all free and responsible, almost everybody is going to choose to love God. And so if you choose to do evil, you will be quickly ostracized.
Yeah.
But you will not be ostracized by the government. You will be ostracized by the kings of Kook, the citizens of Kook.
Thank you very much.
イルボン東京エソン星野正明が生んだ。日本語で質問してもよろしいですか。はい。日本語で質問してもよろしいですか。お父様の血統とイエス様の血統っていうのはつながってるんでしょうか。
Is the lineage of Jesus connected to the lineage of true Father?
We believe the position of sanctuary is very clear. What Father said before he went to the spirit world, he talked about the principle of the God of night and the God of day. And the way he described the God of night, he described the God of night as being the God that existed before creation. And so that God is the eternal God. And then he described the God of day. He described the God of day as being the being which came into existence after creation. So the God of day is a created being. But the confusion which many brothers and sisters have, they think there can only be one God of day. This is not true. There are thousands of gods of days. It's anybody who holds authority on earth is like a visible God of day. The problem is that the God of day in the fallen world has separated from the God of night and does not follow the directions of the God of night. And that is why you have the fallen world. When God's direct dominion is established, when God as the eternal God is in the spirit world, and his created being, his vessel, which is now the second king, his son fully accepts his responsibility and unites with the spirit of the eternal God of night, then that creates the direct dominion of God. And so all the other false gods, or the false gods of days will be pushed away. And so this is the point which is very important to understand. So when we look at this point, then we see basically with Father, what he said was basically he existed before he was born. So this is the same teaching of Christ in the first coming. So basically, when we understand Christology from the Christian point of view, is that God existed as the eternal God and then descended to the earth as Jesus Christ, and then returned back to the Christ head. Basically, what Father is saying is that God from the Christ head came back to the earth as Reverend Sun Myung Moon or the Lord of the Second Advent, and then returned back to the Godhead as the God of night. So if you understand the theology or the Christology which Father is teaching, he is basically saying that God, the eternal God, the Creator, Jesus Christ, and Christ in the second coming, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, these three are the same person, the same spirit. So the teaching of Sanctuary Church is that Jesus Christ and Father are the same spirit, same person.
日本語で失礼いたします。アメリカの星野と申します。ですね、原理本体論の中にですね、神様は2つの生殖器を持っているという表現がございます。2012年の版の、原理本体論の日本語版に、83ページのところにありますけれども。
I'm reading from the Japanese edition of the original substance of divine principle, and this edition was published in 2012. And in this Japanese edition, it says that God has two sexual organs.
これは適切な表現でしょうか。
Is this an appropriate?
夜の神様が女性の構想を持っておられて、女性を創造された、女性の生殖器を創造されたっていうのは分かるんですけれども、最初から、男性と女性の生殖器を持っているという表現はどうかなとちょっと疑問に思いました。
I can understand that the God of night would, as he was in a part of his creation, that the God of night would have created the female sexual organ, but I wonder whether it's appropriate to say that God of night actually possesses both the sexual
The
organs.
position of Sanctuary Church is very clear. I think in Father Chun Sung-kyung, he states very clearly that God is the Father. So God is the predominant ultimate subject partner. And he expresses and he reveals himself as predominantly subjective or masculine. He, of course, has feminine characteristics, but that is his minor characteristics, not his major characteristics. So when he created the creation and the ultimate object partner, which is women, then women is fully manifested as predominantly feminine or objective with the feminine sexual organ. So God is expressed predominantly as the masculine father. With dual characteristics.
それは、生殖器を持っているという両方の生殖器を持っているということでよろしいでしょうか。その表現でよろしいでしょうか。
So is it appropriate to say that God has both sexual organs?
Our position is basically the Chung Sung-kyung is the interpretation which we are understanding is Father's interpretation, that God is the masculine subjective partner. So I think I answered your question. The masculine subjective partner would have a penis. Would you like me to be more clear?
そうですね、女性の生殖器も持っている神様ということの表現はあまり適切でないように思いますけども、それはどうでしょうか。
So it seems to me that it's not appropriate to say that God also has the female sexual organ. Would you agree?
Our position is very clear. We will not touch or edit source documentation which was left during Father's life. And so all of you wonderful, intelligent theologians are free to debate as much as you want. But the teaching is very clear. We are abiding by the teaching in the Chansangyang that God is the masculine subjective partner.
よくわかりました。よくわかりました。
Hi, this question is directed to the king because of your Buddhism, and the queen told me that it teaches you to monitor your own thinking, right? So this question is about meritocratic thinking. Like, you know, some people are coming through Christianity and your advocacy into the liberation of grace, right? And we know that family fed is pretty Old Testament in deeds orientation. Do this so that you can have this. So this is a two-part question. You had said once that people who are meritocratic, you suggested that they don't know they're meritocratic. And if you could explain what that's like, maybe, so that people can start to do some kind of self-questioning or something. And the second part of the question is, can the kingdom tolerate, how much can the kingdom tolerate meritocratic thinking? I mean, is it something we have to like totally like get rid of, or can we kind of tolerate it?
I think that, you know, you're talking about work salvation, and I think that's the most important thing. In the real world, of course, meritocracy is very important. You know, even in a free and responsible economy or in Chinese, meritocracy is very important because the people who serve their customers the best will be rewarded the most. Right? So meritocracy is a natural part of the kingdom. However, when we apply the meritocracy to salvation, that's where the problem arises, right? So in human interaction, meritocracy is a very important thing. Like even if you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for example, you don't get promoted unless you deserve it. You know, you have to defeat all the blue belts or purple belts. You know, you have to merit it. And so even in a free marketplace, or like Chaniguk, which is free and responsible, meritocracy will always be there. But when we talk about salvation, that's a different thing because God gives a very clear standard in the Ten Commandments. And no matter how perfect you are, if you compare yourself to the Ten Commandments, right? If you compare, it says, of course, do not take any idols, do not worship any other gods but me, etc. We worship other things all the time. Where you could worship money, you could worship power, you could worship fame, you could worship your desires, you could worship your dreams, you could worship idols, you could worship, like you were saying, right? Some artist, right? Some artist or whatever. The Ten Commandments also say, do not commit, stealing. Don't lie. But if you think about even a small lie is still a lie. And God does not lie. See, God is truth, so he doesn't lie. So even a small lie for God is huge because God does not lie. So even a tiny, tiny small lie that we think is a small lie is enormous. It's like, it's like in the white snow, let's say is a whole land of white snow, and there's this huge, mountain that is a different color. Right? It stands out so clearly. So if anybody looks at themselves in light of God's perfection or God's holiness, then obviously we do not merit to be near God. We don't merit it. We cannot merit on our own actions being near the most holy being, in the universe, right? So when we look at that, we have lies, small lies is still huge in terms of God's perspective. Even if we stole something when you're young, you stole a little pencil or, a little candy here, or you stole somebody's time, or you downloaded something from the internet, like music, for free, you stole that. Whatever it is, even a small stealing action is actually committing a act of thievery, right? God doesn't steal. So God, his nature is that he does not commit stealing, or he does not commit theft. So even if you commit a very small theft, even if it's like a little candy, or you steal your brother's string or whatever it is, right? You've already sinned in terms of God's perspective. That's already separating you from God. You see what I mean? Even a small thing like that. So when we look at it from human perspective, meritocracy does matter. But when we look at it in relation to God and whether or not we will be saved and be near him or separated from him, then really our actions cannot merit us to be near God, because every single one here has told at least a small lie in your life. You've at least stolen something small in your life, right? Jesus said, if you look upon a woman with lust, another with lust, you have committed adultery. So even if you look this way, oh wow, she's so beautiful, or oh, he's so handsome. Like you were saying, compare your husband to the flamingo man or whatever. Where's Flamingo? Where's Flamingo man? Where's Flamingo son? Flamingo son. Oh, Flamingo son over there. Right? Then, you see? So if you look at so Jesus said that clearly. And so in your heart, then you've committed adultery. You've cheated on your husband. You see? And so that does not bring you near God. That separates you from God. You see? So in light of God's in light of God's perfection, our merit does not bring us to God. Right? It's the merit of God and God's Son that brings us to him. Right? So it's the love of God. It's the sacrifice that Jesus Christ, the sacrifice that Jesus' second coming, true Father, had to pay so that we could put on his flesh, put him on. And then when we go before God, God sees not us and our sins, but he sees true Father's victory. You see, that's a total difference. And that's why understanding grace is so important. When we're talking about in terms of salvation and our closeness with God and our relation with God, then it's not meritocracy. It's God's love represented through the Messiah. Right? And that's the love we put on. If we repent and surrender ourselves to true Father, and in the 3-day sermon, we put on Father. And so when God sees us, he doesn't see all our sins, which he can, he can see, but he sees the victory of true Father. You see that? So that's the difference. But in normal interaction with human beings, of course, meritocracy is very important. To keep your promises, to fulfill your work that you have to do, to work peaceably with others, serving your customers. All these things, these are critical. These are very important for, blessing and success in the physical world.
I think one way a lot of brothers and sisters, of course, when they think about their spiritual life of faith, they're always thinking about in terms of greater indemnity or lesser indemnity. What can I do to, I'll leave God's suffering and God's suffering heart like Father did, and stuff like that. But we have to understand what the goal is, right? The goal is that relationship and that closeness to God, to be his object partner who can reflect and reciprocate God's love, and so that we can become closer to God in love, right? But the big problem of the idea of religious merit or religious meritocracy and religiosity is that often as church members, we are not being instructed in how to have that direct relationship with the Creator and that love with the Creator. Instead, that understanding of religious meritocracy is being filtered through a hierarchy which says you have to do these things for the church. And so then you have a problem there, because you're not serving one master, you're serving two masters. You're serving God plus the hierarchy. And so this is the challenge that we have in trying to define and achieve religious merit. Because depending on the goals that you pursue, you're going to get very different results. If you pursue the goal of being meritorious in the religious organization, then you're actually not pursuing your relationship with God to be in love with God. You're pursuing the relationship of love of the hierarchy. And as a result, when you see biblical history, especially fallen biblical history, you'll always see the separation which God does to his people, because they get always invaded by Satan. And the satanic force which we always see invading God's people is what? It's mammon. It's the love of material things, the love of physical goods, the love of luxury, the love of hierarchy, the love of position, the love of promotion. And each time God's chosen people is challenged to decide what they love. Do they love God or do they love things? So this is the challenge that religious people face. This is the challenge which ministers face in helping their congregations grow in their love of God. Because in order to get the brothers and sisters to grow in their love of God, the ministers can't have to be in a position where they're more, as a coach, as somebody who's guiding and helping the person grow in their relationship with God. And that's one of the very difficult things which the heretic church has, is that their approach to religion is to dominate and control the church members and not to bring them into a greater love relationship with God. And that's the fundamental problem. And so because they serve earthly things, they are not able to value the things which true Father and things which God values. So the Bible is very clear when you see the teaching of Christ. Jesus Christ said very clearly, if you love the Father, you have to love the Son. You love the Father through loving the Son. And these are the exact same words which Father left the church with. He says, if you love me as true Father, then you must love the Son who I give everything to. So, as brothers and sisters who love true Father and true parents, because true Father is true parents, we have to understand his teaching so that we can be more fully in love with our Father. And so that we can bring him joy.
Getting this ultimately completely intolerable, because God will sort that out.
Well, in the end, God says, yeah, I really like you. I love you. You're my son. Or he says, boy, you're an arrogant prick. Get out of my house.
Got it.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I like that. I like that.
Actually, over here we have one.
I am Lucia from Italy. I want to ask you a question about champion providence, the liberation.
Sure.
I understand clearly that the liberations done after through Father's ascension are not valid. But before, but you're referring to the 210 generations.
Yes.
And also, now you liberate the fetus, and I understood that liberation, the donation we did for liberation of fetus before Father Ascension, were not practically right because the teaching of Kim Yon-nam were wrong. So now, before Father's Ascensions, besides liberating the 210 generations, we liberated collective, correlative, relatives of, and then we liberated special figures, any kind of person in the spirit world, famous persons, or our friends, or we liberated even spirits haunting disturbing the body, haunting places. We were asked to liberate many things. I went to Champion with the desire to create this absolutely good spirit to help Father, to help Honjinim at that time in the spirit world. I'm just wondering whether this liberation before Father Ascensions of different kinds were valid or not.
The Sanctuary Church's position is very clear. Father is the Lord of the Second Advent, so everything that Father does, we honor. And so we seek to understand and love Father for the truth of which he is. And so we encourage all brothers and sisters to read all of Father's documents and discuss, to try to better understand true Father. Because as you can see, even in the church organization which Father was running, Father was teaching about God and the relationship with God and instructing in many teachings. But when brothers and sisters heard teachings on things like abortion, the meaning was completely opposite to what Father was teaching. So you can see there that there's very clear examples where Father says one thing and then the organization says another thing. So in that case, who do we follow? Father. So this is our challenge. As we seek to improve and enhance and develop our relationship with Father, we want to separate the things that Father teaches from the things that the church teaches. And we want to throw away the things that the church teaches and only hang on to what Father teaches.
My name is Morita from Japan and Kochi. And, could you translate? Sure. 今までのお話で、質問することもおかしいかなと思うんですけども、チョンピョンの先祖解怨式、祝福式、これはいつまで有効と考えるのか。私の場合は、お父様がこの地上に存命中は、それは肯定されるべきだと思ってますが、いかがでしょうか。
This may be, you may find this question strange given what has already been said, but I would like to clarify up to what point were the ancestor liberations performed in Chongpyo valid? In my opinion, it would be up to the point where of a father's songhwa, but can you confirm that?
We are only accepting valid up to Father Seonghwa, and he only authorized up to 210 generations.
Thank you.
ご世話まで210代までですね。
次のポイントは、日本のよく八百万の神というような形で言われますが、その 全ての万物に神という認識では日本人は捉えてなくて、要するに神性をそこから感じている。要するにオリジナルの神様のその神性をその被造物から感じていると。そういう意味で、矢をよろずの神と我々言っているんですね。ですから、神道の基本は、結局、そこの拝むべきものは何もなくて、結局何があるかというと、ユダの、10回に似たものはですね、これが神道の中にあるだけなんですね。ですから、矢をよろずの神という言い方はちょっと日本人には馴染めないんですね。すべてにそこに神があるというふうに日本人は信仰しているみたいだと言われることは、なかなかその通りと言いにくいんですが、どうお考えですか？
In Japan, we have the expression Yao Yorozu no Kami, which translated literally means 8 million gods. This is often misunderstood by other people who are not deeply familiar with Shinto, as meaning that Japanese believe that there is a god in each and every object. But this is not accurate. What this expression Yao Yorozu no Kami actually means is that we experience the divine nature in each in every object, in every created object, and we're not worshiping there, and so it is not accurate to say that we are worshiping a God in the created objects, so that we are worshiping God in nature, but that we are experiencing divine nature.
I mean, we understand what the pagans say about their understanding of God, but when you talk about 8 million gods, that is standard paganism. It's the same standard paganism as in India. I mean, that's exactly what they say when they're talking about a God in every being, the divinity in every being. And if you look at ancient Greek history and Roman history, they're all in reference to pagan deities. So the position of sanctuary is very clear. All pagan deities are fallen gods of day. They are created beings who have assumed to become God when they have no right to, because there is only one eternal God. To claim as a fallen being that you are God is to separate from God. And so we do not accept any pagans as God. We only accept one eternal God. And the only role which a God of day or an authority on this earth can play is to be in absolute obedience and in love relationship with the eternal Creator. And our understanding from Father's teaching is that Father says that he will always be with us, because true parents will always be on the earth. And so that is what the kingships represent. Father is the first king. The second king is the true parents on earth. My brother now is Father's body, and Father's spirit lives in him as the king. And when he dies and goes to the spirit world, his son, Shinjun, will be Father's body, and Father's spirit will live in him. So we only accept one kingship, which Father left. We only accept one God. And in order to be saved, you have to have the relationship with God's lineage and God's blood. You have to have the blessing of the blood of Christ on you to be allowed to enter into the kingdom of heaven. No blood, no heaven.
熊本安永教会から来ました尾形と言います。
My name is Ogata. I came from the Yasunaga Church in Kumamoto.
井上牧師と他16名で今回は、このペンシルベニアに来ました。
16 of us came with our pastor, Reverend Inoue, to Pennsylvania.
熊本の地震の時には本当にお世話になりました。
Thank you very
お世
much
話になりまし
for
た。
taking care of us
あ
in
り
the
がと
time
う
of
ございま
the
した。
earthquake in Kumamoto.
審判を通して、本当にその生き残るという内容が、ヒョンジン様の御言葉によって本当に、実感をしています。
The earthquake gave us a very practical and concrete experience of survival, which we had heard about and learned through the king's sermons.
この、アメリカに来るまでにとにかくその生き残れとヒョンジン様は、御言葉の中でよく言われています。で、ここに来るまでに毎週木曜、金曜、土曜、日曜と、ヒョンジン様の御言葉の説教を、セミナーという形で勉強してきました。
The king often says in his sermons that you must survive, that we must survive. And that was our motto then. And every Friday night, every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we hold seminars on the king's sermons.
その中で生き残るためにまず、私たちはわからないので、その熊本の地震で受けたものというのは本当に水がなければならないし、食べ物がなければならないし、本当に自分たちで生き残っていかなければならないということを学んだし、それで救われた内容は3万7千の民が本当にその前に解放してくださったゆえに私たちは守られたと思っています。
And through the earthquake, we really experienced that we need to be able to secure our own water supply. We need to be able to secure our own food. But also, we were really grateful that you liberated the 37,000 martyrs, and just before that, and we were protected. We believe that we were saved by those, our lives were preserved by those martyrs that had been liberated.
今回、選挙があります。アメリカの選挙で、結局クリントンと、トランプが本当に勝たなければいけないということを本当に感じます。で、この 1% の本当に悪魔崇拝者が本当に握っていて、でそのためにやろうとしている世界をまず胎児たちを解怨してくださることにおいて、そして本当に先駆けて霊界を整えてくださるお父様とヒョンジン二代王様がおられて、そして本当にその中で私たちはいかに備えていくべきかと、お父様がヒョンジン様が言われたブッシュクラフトも熊本の中でしてきましたし、そして水の、浄化の内容もあれも注文して買って実験もしてきましたし、キャンプもしてきましたし、もうすべてヒョンジン様言われている内容、そして釜でご飯も炊いて本当に見ましたし、たくさん備えてきました。畑も作りました。
ちょっと待ってください。we have the American U.S. election coming up, and Clinton is going up against Trump, and it's absolutely necessary that Trump wins. And the king has also prepared the spirit world by liberating the unborn children. But in Kumamoto, we've been thinking what we need to do to prepare for the future. And so, for example, we've learned how to purify water, and we purchased the items that the king recommended, and we've experimented with them. We've had experience with them. We've also created our own field for food.
で今回、ここに来るためにテーマを一つ持ってきました。個人的においてテーマを持ってきました。この先、今まで備えなさい、生き残りなさい、そして本当に自給自足をなして自主独立をなしていきなさいとヒョンジン様が言われた内容に対して、本当にその御言葉に沿って一つ一つ今やっていってます。で、これから本当にそのカンナにどういうふうに備えていくべきかということをテーマを持ってきましたので教えていただきたいと思います。
In coming here this time, brought a certain kind of a theme for myself, for ourselves. Until now we've done as many things possible as what the king has said to prepare for the judgment and the suffering. But we would like to have your further input on what we should do to prepare for the coming judgment.
I think the king has already talked a lot about that. So what we are seeing in this situation is, for the last 3 years, the king, and of course our sanctuary here, has been talking about the judgment which will come because of what the Han mother did in leaving her position. So before Father went to the spirit world, he talked about two paths to God's kingdom, one through God's blessing and went through God's judgment. If the Han mother had submitted to the king and followed the king, then we would have gone to God's kingdom through God's blessing. But because she has chosen the path to separate, then now we have a judgment. And so the nature of this judgment is what we are seeking to understand. And as we come closer and closer to this election, we can see the nature of the judgment more clearly. So we can see in the microcosmic level that the king is fighting the fallen mother. And so you have the Adam authority fighting the fallen Eve, usurpation. And you are seeing the same parallel in the national election in America. You are seeing this fallen woman, Hillary Clinton, fighting Trump, who is a masculine Adam-type figure. And so, depending on what happens at the macrocosmic level, is going to be determining how the judgment proceeds. If the American people vote for Hillary and make her president, then they have chosen to side with fallen Eve. So that would mean that the people would be judged. And you can see from Hillary Clinton what her platform is in this election. She is very much making Russia the enemy and very much pursuing rhetoric which will bring us into war with Russia. So it's very clear if Hillary Clinton is elected, she's going to start war with Russia. If war with Russia is started, Putin has stated very clearly he will go nuclear very fast. So we could see a nuclear holocaust happen very quickly if Hillary Clinton is elected. Trump, on the other hand, is very clear on his position. His position is he wants to have peace with other nations and other sovereign states like Russia. But he wants to make war against the government. He wants to judge the government. He wants to bring judgment on the government, on the archangel specifically, so that God's judgment goes only on the government and not on the people. So this is the opportunity for us to gain blessing. If the people vote for Trump, then the judgment will go on the government and its people more than it will go on all the people. This is why, depending on who wins this election, the nature of God's judgment on this world will be dramatically different. If Trump wins, all the governments in the world will be judged, but the people will be saved. There's another question.
First of all, I'd like to say happy True Children's to all. Yeah, I am originally from Philippines, but I live in Macau for 20 years. I watched the video since last year, and I have consolidated factors for me to believe the second king is the rightful heir. These are the factors. One, the signatory of True Father, and the second one, the crowning 3 times. And based on the Asian and European tradition, the one to inherit the king heir should be the son. And also based on the lineage, the one who can carry the lineage is only the son. The son can only multiply by a male child, not a woman. So my question is, does not really affect my belief, but I still have to clarify something. Now, on the previous videos, I heard that there's some inconsistency of what Hyung is saying. He said that mother is not supporting him as a king. But I saw some video that mother put his name in the signatory, like in the video. Like mother is pushing you, pushing father to put your name. I don't. The signatory. I don't know. If I'm wrong, that's not a big man. It's the will. The will.
True parent, true son, okay.
The heretic and destroyer paper.
Yeah, that's one of my question, why it happened. Also, you're saying before that if mother is around, there will be no problem of subjectivity, because as long as mother is alive, he is going to take care of all.
I think the tradition of kingship is very clear.
Yeah, that's right.
The queen mother doesn't become the king because she's a woman and she doesn't have the lineage. So the tradition of kingship is very clear. In that case where the queen mother tries to usurp the throne, it's the king's responsibility to arrest her and execute her. That's the king's responsibility. It's the same thing as we study the Bible. What do we study when we study principle? When we study principle, we learn that, after the fall of Eve, if the king or the Adam's authority had stood strong and chastised her, even got rid of her, then God's providence would not have gone the direction of the fallen world. It could have been restored in that generation with a new Eve. So it is very important for the subject partner to keep the subject position. You cannot leave that subject position because that's what's required by God in the principle of creation to fulfill the role of subject-object and then of Cain and Abel in order for that to create the foundation for God's sovereignty on this earth through his lineage. So it's just not possible for the king to submit to his mother, especially when the father has ascended. The mother must submit to the king.
Okay, the second question is directed to Kook Jinim. It's about politics in Asia. Okay, Philippines is the only Christian nation in Asia. And you know that we have been conniving with America for a long time, 20 years. And now our president is so vocal against the Americans and the European. Now, as a Christian nation, now he's conniving with China and Russia. What do you think about the significance of this one?
This is the great confusion of this age, because the countries which used to be good are bad, and the countries which used to be bad are in some ways better. And there's nobody who's good or bad. Everybody's all jumbled up in this big mess. This is the problem. This is the problem of relativism. And relativism is what? It's Satan's teaching. So this is why when everything good and evil gets jumbled up and you can't tell what's good and evil, then God divides and separates good and evil. And this is what the king is doing when he separates from his mother. He's separating from good and evil so that it's very clear. He's preserving his position. So what we can see what happened in the Philippines is that first the Philippines, the president wanted to maintain the relationship with the United States. And so he asked America to defend his territory in the Spratly Islands around those seas. And so, then the U.S. supported the Philippines in the international courts, and they got the ruling to say that Chinese shouldn't be there. But America didn't really show a force to keep China away from those seas. They didn't send aircraft carriers. They didn't send a lot of military assets. And so seeing America's relatively weak action, the president basically said, okay, between this conflict between China and America, Russia is very weak and China just getting stronger, America is going to lose. So I'm going to side with China. That's what the president is doing right now.
So do you think
there is a fundamental problem with America. The fundamental problem is when Father was on the earth, he said, the UN is Cain UN. What is Cain UN? It's satanic. So what the UN, the satanic UN which they're trying to form, or this new world order, this world government, is not a God-centered world government. It's a dictatorship. And so right now, when people look at this world government, there's great confusion because Father wanted to make the one world centered on God. But now this government is actually being one world centered on Satan. This is the problem. And so as this new world order is pushing forward, nations are saying, whoa, wait a minute, this is terrible. We are going to become slaves to this world government. And so Putin is saying, okay, I don't want to be part of this dictatorship. I want my sovereignty. I want to be the controller of Russia. And so it's one thing is when you look at Putin, he's a dictator, so he has many bad aspects. On the other hand, he's saying, I want to be sovereign, which is what God wants. And it's the same situation with Duarte in the Philippines. Because the center is not following the king, there is only confusion and there is no good and evil. This is the problem. So if we want to get to being good, we have to center on Christ. Because only Christ gives us the gifts of God. Only Christ can bring the able UN. So what is the able UN? It's the Constitution of Cheonilguk. There is only one solution for one world under God. That is the Constitution of Cheonilguk, which Sanctuary Church and the Second King has presented to the world. There is no other path to world peace and world unity. Men cannot make peace because men cannot give the gifts of God. Gifts of God only come from God. They only come when we accept Christ as our Father.
Yes, before I end this one, but I just want to mention to everybody that President Duterte actually has a friend, a member, and his slogan is that state and religion should separate, but state and God should not separate. So I feel like there's some significance of this one. Thank you very much.
Yes, there's a difference between religion and God. That's the point we're making.
Thank you.
2つ目の質問いたします。
That's my second question.
本日安永教会の方たちが来てらっしゃいますけれども、島原の乱のですね、3万7000名を解怨されたその直後に、4日後にですね、熊本地震がありました。
Today we have people here from the Yasunaga Church in Kumamoto, but of course the Kumamoto earthquake occurred 4 days after the king liberated the 37,000 martyrs of Shimabara.
この地震のエネルギーはですね、その21年前にあった阪神・淡路大震災のエネルギーとほぼ同じだと言われています。
The energy that was produced by that Kumamoto earthquake is said to have been similar to the earthquake that occurred in the Kobe, Osaka area 21 years ago.
その神戸、阪神・淡路では6000名のですね、方々が亡くなりました。
In the Kobe area, about 6,000 people died 21 years ago.
ところが熊本地震では地震で直接亡くなった方は50名、そして関連死含めると110名です。
In Kumamoto, 50 people died as a direct result of the earthquake, and if you include indirect deaths, 110 people died.
このことからですね、判断するに、この島村の解怨があったゆえにですね、その被害が圧縮されたというふうに私は思いました。
So it was my feeling that the damage or the number of people died in Kumamoto was reduced as a direct result of the fact that the martyrs were 37,000 martyrs were liberated.
最もその象徴的なのは安永教会があるところが震源地になったわけですけれども、その安永教会自体がですね、無傷であったと。
And I think what really illustrates this is the fact that the epicenter was in the exact location of the Yasunaga church, but the church itself was not damaged.
ここに全てですね現れていると私は思うんですけれども。
Well, you have to be careful how you look at what is good and bad. Because one of the problems which we as human beings face and get into is that we think good and bad is determined by us. And so we say, okay, if there was an earthquake and X number of people died, then that must be bad. But this is a fundamental flaw, because then you're defining good and bad based on human morality, and if you do that, then you get back into relativism, which is, I can be God. So for us to really understand what is good and what is bad, we have to understand what the definition of good or badness is, what is righteousness and what is sinfulness. And understanding righteousness and sinfulness is very easy. It's not difficult. The definition is very simple. And the simplicity of the definition explains everything in God's providential history of what God sees as being right and what God sees as being wrong. Because when we look at the providence of God, especially when he led Moses to the banks of Canaan, and then he sent Joshua with Caleb into Canaan to conquer it, what did they do after they brought down the walls of Jericho? They killed every man, woman, and children. Was that good or was that bad? By what definition? So what is God's definition of goodness? There is only one definition which can explain everything in the Bible, in providential history, in terms of this is righteousness and this is sinfulness. And the only definition which satisfies all cases in the biblical history is righteousness or goodness is that which brings you closer to God. Sinfulness is that which separates you from God. If you understand good and bad from this principle, then you can understand all the events of the Bible from God's point of view. Remember, God created humanity and this earth to be his creation, his children. The problem is, after his creation, because of the fall, the creation was infected by satanic lineage. And so, if you look at the Bible, God is seeking to remove or destroy or kill Satan's lineage on this earth. This is biblical history. So when we look at righteousness from God's point of view, we say it was, if God wills it and that is what will bring us closer to God, that is righteous and good. And this is how we must understand righteousness and goodness. And this is how we must understand the judgment which is coming. Because the judgment which God brings is ultimately so that we can be restored to our position and that we can be with God.
Hello, my name is Hope Igarashi from Las Vegas. I was a former Christian, so I just want to say one thing about Sanctuary Church separating themselves from Hak Jahan Moon. Jesus, this is nothing new to you, but I just want to comment. Jesus left his mother. At one point in the Bible, we read that Jesus was looking for her son. He was in the temple. And what did Jesus say? When they said, your mother is looking for you, he said, who's my mother? Who's my brother? Only those that do the will of God. So I just had to get that out. Also about righteousness and good and bad. The way I've looked about how God, during the time of Noah, all the people, the evil people, were in the flood and they drowned. For God so loves the world. Because you need a body, a physical body to do evil deeds. God put those people in the spirit world to stop doing evil, but God loves them. And God put them away, like in prison. But I know that True Father has a plan to save everyone through the divine principle of resurrection. I just had to share that, I'm sorry. But my question is this. It's about the holy wine. For example, as we witness to family-fed fraud members and those who took the holy wine, and then we bring them over and they convert to sanctuary to the king, before they take the new wine, does there have to be some condition? And the reason I ask this is because I took that holy wine. I was on the staff at the Family Fed in Las Vegas. I was on the preparation for the August 19th blessing. And I was still not sure about sanctuary at that time. My husband was 100%. So I begged him to come with me, and I drank, but he wouldn't drink it. And then later, when I read somewhere that Mother, that Hak Chahan said that in the womb, she knew the truth. That did it for me, okay? That did it for me. And so then I converted and united with my husband 100%, and we ordered the kit, okay? And the blessing kit from Sanctuary, and we did our ceremony. The blessing, I took that wine August 19th, but we did the ceremony September 25th. So we're in our 40-day separation. We will do our 3-day ceremony in 4 days. But seriously, before I do that 3-day ceremony, my question is, do I have to do some condition? And this is going to be for other people.
Those are the things which the king is ruling on a weekly basis, and he's ruled on those kind of cases. So your case fits his ruling. Maybe Tim can correct me if I don't get the ruling exactly correct. Or would you like to explain the ruling which the king ruled on?
First of all, you asked if there's any condition that's necessary before taking the wine. There's no condition necessary before taking the wine. Anyone can take the wine. And then you ordered a blessing kit. That was good. And then when you perform the blessing, then you need to use the blessing kit along with a video of the king online, so that you are participating in the whichever video that you choose of the king's blessings, since there are a number of them beginning in April 21st of last year. And then you are receiving the blessing prayer, especially from the king. And then, as you said, you're going through your 40-day condition. And then after the end of the 40-day condition, yes, then you need to receive a prayer from someone that can be done by, we have leaders around the country, or Richard Panzer can do it because he's leading the sanctuary.
I think you missed the point. Igarashi, she's saying,
yes,
never left the father. So from the merit of the Adam figure, the subject partner not leaving the position.
Yes, thank you.
Then the condition is a little bit different.
That's right. Okay, so yes, because your husband did not leave, because your husband did not take the satanic wine, your case is a little bit different. You do not need to go through the entire 3-day ceremony because his seed, which he received through his original blessing that you received from True Father some Which couple are you? 2075. 2075
But
couples.
there's a
That is still
condition.
valid. So
He has to
just
always
one.
be on top.
Yes, will always be on top during that ceremony.
If you were on bottom, then that's a problem, because that's accepting subjugation by a fallen evil.
So when you do the 3-day
Okay.
ceremony, the husband can just be on top all 3 days, because he's not in the fallen position. He's in the already in the restored body of Christ and a son God position. So just be on top of the first all 3 days. Yes. Is that clear? Thank you.
My name is Kook from Worcester. About the microcosmos appeal to macrocosmos, I'd like to know more detail. And what I almost felt, this is like almost principle to work way.
Well, the concept of microcosm to macrocosm is very clearly represented when you study the life of Christ, right? Jesus in his first coming, his ministry was very local, and his teaching was very local. But whatever he did on that local small level, it actually multiplied to actually conquer the entire world. And so this kind of microcosmic representation is what God uses to affect the change for the entire world. So Christ never became the actual emperor on the earth, but the conditions which he established was able to bring the world up to a spiritual salvation, up to the top of the growth stage. And so this is what we're talking about, the microcosm and the macrocosm. Because of the situation of the church, the worldwide level foundation which Father had built was taken by the fallen mother, then basically history, providential history, is not being driven by what the church does, even though it was brought to the worldwide level, or even the governments of the world. It is being driven by who carries God's lineage and God's seed. And so now the actions of individuals in a smaller scale at a local level, based on those interactions between providential figures at the local level, actually determine what will happen in the macro level, or in the level of the entire world. And so this is what you talk about now, the parallel of current history, where you see the parallel in the microcosmic level being reflected at the macrocosmic level. It's two histories which you're seeing, but what is the cause and effect is that the microcosm is the cause for the macrocosm. So what we see is basically with the emergence of with a subjective masculine figure like Trump, you didn't see that emergence until the king separated from the fallen mother and chastised her. So if you were here in Sanctuary 3 years ago, when we first came out here, when my brother came out here in exile and I came out to support him, with just the two of us. And we're talking with the local brothers and sisters. And they asked, what is the direction of providence? So we talked about what Father had said about providence, how it could go the direction of God's blessing or God's judgment. Clearly, we're on the path to God's judgment, to God's kingdom through judgment. And then we talked about, well, how will this microcosm, you two being here with nobody, the church foundation, all God, how are you going to carry out God's providence and save the world? Well, that's why you have to understand how God works. God works through the lineage, through the blood, through Christ in his first and second coming. And by those actions, we talked about what we would see as how God would proceed to try to save the world. And so we talked about what is necessary to bring God's kingdom would be the emergence of an able-type revolution. And the criteria for an able-type revolution is basically the ruling elite, the ruling class has to split. There has to be a separation between good and evil. This is what the principle talks about. When Satan invades, then God is the one who divides. So there has to be a division from the top down. Satanic or Cain-type revolutions are the lower classes just taking over. It's bottom rabble taking over the whole country and making a big mess. But the Abel-type revolution, especially what you saw like in the United States, was when the leaders of the country split. And then the people who are more God-centered overcame the more satanic side. And so this is what you're seeing. When we talked about how God would proceed in the providence, we said the leader of God's side in the Abel-type revolution has to be an Abel-side billionaire. This is before Trump came out. And you can talk to the brothers and sisters. This is exactly what we talked about. And because of the separation in the from the heresy of Johann Mother, then as the king pursued his anointing and accepted his inheritance as a king, then you saw the entire world changing. You saw the Trump revolution. You saw the Abel-type billionaire emerge. So clearly, Trump is the masculine, male-type Adamic figure. He represents the subjectivity of man. He represents Adam, who says, woman, fallen woman, I don't need you. Go to jail. That is exactly the way we understood history to proceed, based on Father's teaching and the principle. And as our understanding of principle, so did history progress. So this is how the microcosm determines the macrocosm. So all these understanding of providential history in the direction of the world, for sanctuary members, is not a mystery, because we've discussed it. Only the heretic church is confused. Okay? Good. Lock her up. Absolutely. That's what Adam should have done to Eve. Lock her up. You see, everything relates back to the Garden of Eden. Nothing changes. It's the same story. It's the same story. The principle is living, and it is happening. And everything that is happening has been foretold here in Sanctuary.
ヒョンジンにはいつも夫は妻を愛しなさいって言われるんですけども、愛せない妻をどのように愛するかって、具体的な方法を聞きたいっていうのと、あとお父様は裏切ったお母様をどのように愛していかれたのかっていうのと聞きたい。
Is this on? Hyung always says that the husband should love his wife even if she is unlovable. I'd like an explanation of how exactly that can happen.
Well, when you lock her up, that's really showing love.
Also, can you tell us how did Father love Mother even when she had betrayed him?
Well, when Father was on the earth, he locked her up. That's why when Father left, she tried to escape the prison. But this is why the son's responsibility is to lock her up. So what is the solution to the Garden of Eden? You know? Lock her up! See, principle is very beautiful and very simple. It's not hard to understand.
No, I think there's two different types of locking up. There's putting in prison, and there's also jujitsu. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so that's what the Bible commands us, is for the husband to unconditionally love the wife, and the wife to unconditionally love respect the husband. Okay, now this is very important because usually in our modern world, when we're talking about marriage, we're only talking about the husband has to unconditionally love the wife, right? But they never finish the actual Bible quote, which says, but the wife must unconditionally respect her husband. Okay, so this is what God's plan is. God's plan is for love and respect. Okay, because God knows what a man needs, and God knows what a woman needs. And man needs respect, woman needs love. Okay, so the Bible teaching is very clear, and it's very, God's word is true. The problem is satanic world only take one side. And they try to only say Adam has responsibility, Eve has no responsibility. She can do whatever she wants. And Adam has to just love whatever she does, which is ridiculous, right? That's absurd. So from a principle perspective, if your wife is acting unprinciply and is falling, then you must do what is correct in God's eyes. You must chastise, like Kook said, you must lock her up, you must chastise her, you must expose her for her evil, and not let her get away with the evil. In the same way, also, God's commandment is very clear for the woman. If the husband is unrighteous before God, then that means the wife she still has to act respectfully. She has to deal with him respectfully, but she has to be against unrighteousness, right? But how does she change and transform the husband? Not by yelling and screaming and nagging at him. That will never change him. That will only make him worse. Even though it's hard, even though it's hard, is by showing respect for that man. And through that showing of respect, then a conversation can begin, and then things can start to come out, right? But that respect has to be there. But usually in the modern world, women are taught not to respect men at all. They're taught not to respect their fathers, not to respect their husband, not to respect men in general, and to look down on them. You see this in the movies, you'll see this in Korean drama, this kind of stuff. So women now in the modern day, because they are watching those kind of things all the time, become trained by that kind of satanic media. So many times when they want to change their husband or some issue, they just want to talk about it, but husband does not want to talk about it, right? Because the woman feels that if we talk about this issue, then we can solve this issue. But the husband perspective is no, if I talk to you, all I get is nag and condemnation. You see? So he does not want to talk. Instead, a wise woman, a godly woman, will approach her husband in a wise way. She'll approach him with a wise counsel. Okay? So she will be the type of woman who will respect his space, his time, his timing, respect that he needs, that the conversation has to happen, but that it will happen. For example, my wife, if she really needs to talk to me about something, then she will ask me, tomorrow, 8 o'clock, 30 minutes, okay? She will not disrespect my time. So also my children learn this too. They should not disrespect daddy's time. When daddy's teaching you jiu-jitsu or MMA or this kind of stuff, don't disrespect my time, right? And so she will show that kind of respect, and then as a father and as a man, then it's very easy for me to agree to discuss that issue during that time. So that's a very practical thing. Okay, that's how she shows respect to her husband, by not just saying, I need to talk about this now. I want to talk this now. I'm so now. You know, this is not respect. Right? And you see, the women who do that have terrible, terrible relationship with their husband. You can see the result. So if you want a terrible relationship with your husband, you want to curse upon your family, you follow those women. But if you want a blessing upon your family, you have to follow women who are godly, who know how to deal with their husband in a godly way. And the women who know how to deal with their husband in a godly way will respect their husband, because it's not only because the husband is respectable, okay? It's because she's obeying God and bringing joy to God. When the husband is, she feel very not respectable. But she's obeying God's commandment to respect him. So that's hard to do, but that makes her grow spiritually. And that makes her understand God's love for her more deeply, if she does it, if she really does it. Because that is the way to actually come into the man's presence and his opening slowly what all the women want, his vulnerability. You want your husband to be vulnerable. You want him to share with you. You want him to tell you his heart. But you can't just demand that from a man, because a man is trained never to be vulnerable. Right? Whereas girls on the other side, you're taught to be vulnerable from a very young age. That's how you make friends with other girls, by being vulnerable and opening yourself up, you know, socially, right, to your friends. But men are the other way. So that is a very important aspect practically of marriage and blessed life. Practically, not theologically, but practically. And also the flip side of that is as a man. Paul talks about the different aspects of love, right? He talks about love as being having endurance, what the Bible calls forbearance, patience. So love, of course, speaks truth to evil. So if the wife is acting evil, then the husband's responsibility is to call her evil. It's his responsibility. He must say, you are an evil woman. You are an evil woman. You are acting evil in this way. You are committing sin against God. So it is his responsibility to do that, just like he has to. The husband must submit to God, and he must be judged by God. In the same way, the Bible says the wife must submit to her husband. Okay, that means she has to be in the object position. So if the wife is trying to be in a subject position, then the husband has to be clear with her that that is not principle. At the same time, the husband also, unconditional love, you know, when if there is some disagreement with the wife, it means also to be patient. The Bible also talks to be kind. And there's a lot of problems with a lot of fallen women. If a husband is kind and patient, they usually think he's weak. A lot of fallen women have that kind of perspective. But godly women should not see kindness and patience as weakness, because if you have a relationship with God, you know how kind and patient he's been with you. If you really understand God the Father, you understand how powerful he is, but how loving and how kind he has been. right, compared to the sin that you have. So it's usually women who do not have a relationship with God that do not understand that kindness and patience does not equal weakness. But if the woman has a relationship with God, she can understand, very powerful God, but very patient with me, very kind to me, thank you, God, right? They can understand that because they have a living relationship with God. So usually godly women can understand that if their husband is patient with them and if he's kind with them, that he is exhibiting God's aspect, but doesn't mean he's weak. He can still be very powerful. So like in Asia, we say like mushi, right? Mushi. It's very important that if the husband is acting kindly or acting patient, that you don't mushy him. Because if you mushy him, that means you're totally disrespecting his practice of forbearance for you. Right? So godly women who have relationship with God understand God's power, his masculine strength, his power. He can kill, he can destroy, he can bring down civilizations, but at the same time, he is patient and kind. This is very important. So for example, one thing that's really wonderful and God has blessed us with, this whole community with, is the practice of like very hard type martial art training. Okay? So in the very hard types of martial arts training, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or kickboxing or MMA, this kind of thing, if women's train together with men, you will see big difference in power. Big difference. So women who train in these kind of harder arts, of course, they become very strong compared to normal women, very strong. Even can defeat normal men, so they become very strong. But they do not mushy men's power. Because they know, even though they are strong compared to normal people, if they have to fight with a master who is also a man, very strong, they lose. Okay? So then they respect the physical nature of men. So also, problem with a lot of Japanese men and Asian men now in modern day is the men have become so women-like. This is a problem. Right? So the men have become very weak. And they just do computer game or just internet all the time. And they are not developing their masculine traits. They're not weightlifting and they're not building themselves to become more masculine. They don't put any attention on that. And they become so feminine. So then and the society then creates the men very, very like women. So the woman is very unattracted to the man. And then they are attracted to, many times, bad men who do those things. So it's important also, Father made the men do very difficult things too, like do hard martial art training or do exercise, make you stronger, masculine. Father loves that. He likes when men are masculine and powerful. And also like hunting and fishing. Even if you're just working on the farming things, you become very strong, right? So these kind of aspects too, in the modern day, many men do not do that, and they become very, very feminine. But they are different from women. They still have many aspects of the man, but just their body is so, their physical stature is so weak. You see? But I find very important when my wife sees my physical power, right? If I'm teaching group young people, and I'm teaching them Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or things like that, then these kids and my wife also can see my physical power. Even though I'm a very nice person, I don't act in a threatening way. But when they can see my physical power, they immediately have a different level of respect. And then my wife can also see, wow, my husband's very strong, right? She can actually see that. She can feel that too. So this is also a very important part of Chanigu culture, of the peace, militia peace police as well, is to understand this reality of the difference between man and woman. You naturally learn when you do very hard type of training. You naturally will learn, okay? So I think to answer that question, practically, when husband is being patient or being forbearance or being kind, godly women, you should not see them as weak. That's a mistake. If you mushy them, your marriage will be cursed. Okay? At the same time, husband too should pursue things which are masculine. You should not only just do internet and video game all day. You should go out and shoot guns, and you should go out and learn hunting. And you should go out and learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You should do things that make you masculine too. Because then that will also make your wife happier as an object partner. I guarantee you, it will, as you get stronger, but you're still loving and patient, she will appreciate that aspect of you a different way. So that's very important too. The men have responsibility too. You must pursue manly, masculine things too. The modern world tell you don't do that stuff, but it's wrong. God's kingdom, you have to do that stuff. You have to learn. You are the peace police. You are the peace militia. You are the front line. You are the king of your house. The king of your house has to fight for his country. You have to be ready to fight. So if you have that spirit, you will see your household culture become very different. Very different. And even the women in your household become stronger. They're not weak women. Like my wife and also our sister-in-law live in our house. Also my daughter, she's training jiu-jitsu and all this. Compared to normal girl, they're much stronger, much stronger. Mentally, much stronger. Mentally, much stronger. Physically, much stronger. Right? They're still very feminine. They're still very ladylike. Right? But that happens when the sexes can, what's in psychology called the sexes can sexually differentiate. They can be different, but that's important for a man to pursue strong things. It's very important, because if the man doesn't do that and he becomes too much like a woman, then the woman cannot differentiate, and then she tries to become the man and then tries to dominate him. And then that's when your household becomes cursed by Satan. So it is a responsibility for men to pursue the things that make you strong, right?
I think that's a really good point, because, a lot of people think of callings as people being called to be a minister or a policeman, but actually, before we are actually called to do an occupation, God calls us to be what?
Man or woman.
A man and a woman. So if you're born as a man and you say, oh, I don't feel like I'm a man, I feel like I want to be like a woman, you are denying God. That's the challenge. You have to develop your life and your motivation and your attitude and meet your fears so that you can meet God's first calling. Which is, when he gives you a man's body, he wants you to be a man. You have to answer that call. So not all things in life are a matter of choice. God calls you to be either a man or a woman and to fulfill his purpose of creation. And then within that calling, he gives you freedom and responsibility so that you can develop and fulfill that role. But believe me, it is a role. It's something you have to grow into. It's not something which you get automatically. You have to put effort into it.
Absolutely. You know, they did study that shows what women hate the most in men. The one thing women hate the most in a man, any man that has it, they hate that. They don't, immediately they are unattracted to that person, that man. What that is a sense of neediness. If that man is needy, he's craving approval and attention. So that's why girls get attracted to bad boys usually, because they don't care about the girls. They don't even care about them. Do you see what I mean? They don't even care about those. The bad boys usually, you know, they're not intimidated by girls. So the girls get attracted to them. But girls most hate, they're most unattracted to men who are very needy or who seem like they're constantly seeking approval. You see? So the problem is if when men pursue manly things and they learn how to do fighting and they learn how to do shooting guns and they learn how to, when you do this manly things, that goes away. That desire to want to be needy gets smaller and smaller because you get stronger and stronger. Do you see? So it's very important that men pursue manly things. Then actually the wife is happier because the man is not needy. He's already very strong in his mindset. That doesn't mean he's an oppressor or something. He can still be very gentle and kind. But mentally, and when he makes a decision, boom, it's going. There's no shaking. He won't shake. Right? So that's why it's very important for a man to pursue those kind of arts. And in Choniguk, every person has to learn those arts. That's just natural part of peace police, peace militia, because there's no centralized police, no centralized military. Everybody has to be the protector of their house, of their, maul, the community, their little town. They have to protect it. They have to be the police. So with that sense of responsibility, then naturally you will learn those arts that makes you stronger. And in the arts that make you stronger, there's a natural respect. There's a respect that you will learn.
Okay, I think that's a lot of questions. There's more?
Good morning and thank you so much. My question comes from, as we try to, witness and talk about Sanctuary Church, there's sometimes questions that are asked that we cannot, we don't know. Louder? And it has to do with a sequence of events, from the time that there was the letter from Spirit World saying that, that quote unquote dethroned H1, that had him leave, up until the time of your leaving the palace. So one of the questions is, were you aware at the time that the letter was false? And also
the whole point, I think, which is very important to grasp, is that that's the time when Father was presiding.
Yes.
Right. So if Father is presiding, he's the king, and we all follow what the king says. So that's kind of, it's not for us to judge the king, it's for the king to judge us. I mean, Father is the Lord of the second advent, he's God on earth. So if Father says, H1, you're not my successor anymore, you're fired, and H2, you're the king, then he's the king. It's just that simple.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for me, it's not a question of, well, can we second guess Father's decision, or were we gonna say he did this right, he should have done that? No, I mean, Father's my king, so he's not only my father, he's my king. So when the king makes a decision, you just salute and say, yes, sir. And what else shall we do for you?
I agree.
Long live the
I
king,
agree,
right?
I agree. And just one last question, if I may. That also comes up is, at what point were you aware of mother's betrayal or mother's moving away from father?
The problem is we always loved mother and hoped that she would do the right thing, and we did not want to see the things that father saw.
Right.
So father, if you look at his words, was talking about mother's betrayal and laying all the words necessary for people to understand what father was perceiving. From the son's position, I don't want to see it. So it's my problem. But after father ascended, it was very clear, undeniable, that she was separating from father, because she basically called us in and said, I'm the Messiah, what do you think? And we said, no, thank you. So after we said no thank you to her being the Messiah, she wants to cut off her heads. So then basically, we have no choice but to carry on our lives with love and loyalty to our Father.
Yes.
We did not pursue the path of glory and wealth. We pursue the path of love and loyalty, even if love and loyalty means that everybody in the world hates you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, before we, before we, you have time for one more? Or it's getting late.
One more, just one more.
That young
and then
person
finish it
up
up.
there.
Young
From the
man up there.
Japanese group,
Yeah, if we don't cut it off, it won't stop.
日本語で失礼します。昨日は、大いなる祝福いただきありがとうございました。
Thank you very much for the wonderful blessing, holy blessing that you bestowed us on us yesterday.
すみません。一つとちょっと簡単な質問一つしたいんですけれども、まず7年の観難というふうにそのヒョンジンニムがずっとおっしゃられている内容があると思うんですけれども、その7年を過ぎた時にその天一国のが実体的に開かれていくっていうふうにおっしゃられていると思います。
I believe that the king has said that there will be 7-year judgment, and that the Chanuguk will become substantial right after the end of that 7-year period.
です。その7年間を僕たちも、さっきマイマザーなんですけれども、ファーム農場も開いて、水ウォラーもしっかり自分たちで掴んで、でヒョンジンニムの御言葉もリマも掴んでいきながら生き延びたいと思うんですけれども、でその中で、生き延びた先にじゃあヒョンジンニムがお父様が勝利された時にその全世界回られたようにヒョンジンニムも全世界回ったりすることは可能なんでしょうか。
So actually, it was my mother who spoke before about getting the water supply in the farm, and we intend to survive this judgment using rimas. Once that period is over, then will Hyung-jinim, like Father did, will Hyung-jinim be touring around the world?
I think so.
でもし可能ならその、ヒョンジンニム、ヨナニムとクチニム、チェニムの好きな日本食を教えていただければ、その準備してお待ちしたいと思います。
If you will tell us in advance what Japanese cooking you enjoy, then we will prepare it for your visit.
I think we like ramen.
Well, if we go to Japan or different countries, we may take you into the wilderness. We may not allow you to be in a hotel. We may do bushcrafting expeditions.
Then you have to go to Hokkaido.
Okay, before we end this program, we do have a special request from Richard Panzer to talk about the scorecard that has been put together and supported by Kook, and this is allowing people to understand clearly who Trump is, what he stands for, and what Hillary is, and what she stands for. So if you want to do something and have an impact, please take some of these cards and hand them out. Do you have anything? Richard, do you want?
No, that's what I was going to say. So
That's what he was going to say.
but I think Clark Gingrich is coordinating locally. Is that true?
Okay.
It's good for to talk to Clark. Then, here, Angela, you want to say something about? Well, first of all, we want to thank the Yunjin Moon Charitable Foundation scorecards were printed and distributed in Virginia, Ohio, Nevada,
Pennsylvania.
New Mexico.
Michigan, Nevada, and all the western states, and Florida. All the major swing states, plus all the other states. And the people that are receiving the scorecards feel there's something special attached to it. Last night on the call with Family Federation and Sanctuary Church people, there were testimonies of people actually changing their vote and feeling that they're having something special in their hands by reading that scorecard. I think it's because of your blessing and your sermon that people are coming to realize there's something greater going on than just an election. There's a war. And some Family Federation wrote a letter that I have on my computer to thank you, the foundation, Yunjin and Kook, for your effort of putting the money where the mouth is, so to speak, because by doing that, actually, they were able to do this campaign. Without your support, they would have never been able to do it, and they feel now they have hope to change the outcome of the election because of your direct input in saving the country to the export.
So this is the sword of truth. It's the word. So anyway, pass it around. And see Clark Gingrich for coordinating local efforts. But I mean, you can take these, you can hand them out at the airport as you leave too. That's also good if people coming back into the country. But anyway, these are very important. Thank you very much, and let us give a special round of thanks to both Hyung and Kook for this time.
Okay, that's finished.
참 아버님께 경배 바로 Thank you very much for giving us so much of your time, but very generous for your time. Thank you.